Okay, we should be good. So, the prompt for this week's Zoom discussion is throughout the chapters thus far, we have explored interpersonal relationships in a variety of contexts, as well as how our identity is shaped by these interactions. For this discussion, let's consider with the group the ways in which digital technologies like text messaging, social media, and other mediated platforms and structures have impacted the ways that relationships are formed and maintained. So who would like to start us off on like their thoughts on that? And then we could all bounce off each other.
I can start.
Okay.
So I think nowadays in the modern age, genuine like real relationships are harder to be formed because of technology. Whereas a bigger quantity but less quality of relationships can be formed from online. And we can especially see this in social media apps like Snapchat, Instagram, where you can communicate basically anything you want to someone without being near them. This does have its positives and its negatives though. The positive being that it's easier to form these surface relationships where they're not letting the people get in the inner circle. They're kind of just keeping kind of like friendly stranger relationships. But the negative of that is the genuine relationships that are being forgotten. It's basically quality over quantity. And there was something in chapter 4 that talked about uncertainty reduction. And so when people are unsure of a situation or of someone else, they utilize strategies to reduce the uncertainty. I thought about how this connects to the modern age and technology, and I realized that technology is a decent tool to reduce uncertainty to an extent. Oh, can everyone hear me?
I can.
I
Okay.
can.
Okay. That being said, no matter how comfortable you might feel with someone online, um, for all you know, it could be a completely different interaction in the face to face. So I would say technology is good and helpful in a way, but it will not solve the issue of these face to face interactions that have a lot of uncertainty to them. However, there are these technology sites like Zoom and House Party and Skype that allow you to communicate and see someone's face. This is kind of the right idea and a step towards the right direction, especially if you have family members out of the country or out of the state that you really want to talk to and see face to face. That relationship can still be maintained that way. Thank you.
I like the points you brought up. I think that I agreed with a lot of them, and I feel like that there's like definitely positives and negatives, and I feel like they kind of equal each other out. Like I do see the bad in technology, but there also is a lot of good. So when I was when I was reading this Zoom prompt, I like kind of wrote out what I was gonna say. I brought up like that it is instant communication with digital technology such as like text messaging or instant messages apps. They have like facilitated quickly and it's easy communication. But that also does have its negatives. It can lead to like expectation of immediate responses, potential like stress, like if you're like where if you were like talking to somebody in person, they kind of like can answer now, where now like people kind of like ghost each other. So I feel like that is like also the negative, like you're waiting for someone, or it also could be like a misunderstanding, which is also really hard. I brought up like online dating because I feel like that has such a big impact in today's world where before that was just not a thing. Everybody met each other face to face, through other connections. But I feel like a digital platform has transformed it completely, which I don't think it's a bad thing. I feel like it's some people it's easier to communicate online, but that does have effect to how you do talk in person. Um, I also brought up the fact that it talks about in a couple of the chapters about privacy. I feel like digital technologies has allowed individuals to maintain relationships across distances, fostering connections that might not have been possible otherwise. Um, I do see that also about privacy concerns and the blurring of personal and public that can create challenges. or like oversharing or the misuse of personal information can strain on the relationships that we build. Also self-esteem. They talked about in a couple of the chapters. I thought that was huge. I feel like now people are just so they just like see a picture of you and they just have like such either high expectations or low expectations. And that can bring up a lot of self-esteem where like with hate comments or something like that. I feel like that is also very hard in today's world. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much all I had with that.
I kind of wanted to go off of what you and Liam said, just kind of about like the accessibility of it and like kind of the convenience of it. More on the positive side, I do agree that with like social media and technology and just other mediated platforms, we have like the ability to just be able to text each other all the time and keep like a relationship like maintained from that. So I do see like a positive with like people, like I have family that like lives across the country and stuff, so that's like nice being able to communicate with them and stuff. But as far as like the negatives, I do think there's like a couple of like the impact on intimacy. I feel like sometimes a lot I've heard a lot of backlash, especially with like our generation not being able to like know how to communicate in person, which I don't think is true, but I've heard that a lot through other people saying we're just like heavily rely on social media and texting, that when it comes to in person we lack those sort of social skills. So that's just one thing I wanted to add. I think like also what you said about like online dating platforms, I think they become like increasingly popular, and um in a good way and a bad way. Like I think it does provide people with like convenient ways to meet other people, and like um they do like use algorithms to try and like pick out people's preferences and interests and kind of like sort them into different categories. So I think that is also like a cool like positive way it can help relationships. And one last positive I can say is um just how we've expanded social networks, allowing people and individuals to connect with like a larger number of people. um I think, like as far as jobs as well, like we have LinkedIn, there's like Indeed. We use a lot of these platforms, to get connected with other people in our work field or like looking for jobs and stuff like that. So I think that's a really awesome positive, to be able to like search and filter like what you're looking for and like reach out to certain people and kind of just like expand your social networks and stuff like that.
Haley, I love the point that you brought up about uh, people saying that our generation lacked the communication skills when we are upfront and like in person with one another, because I hear that a lot too. But I work with kids personally, and so I see that huge lack from this next generation upcoming, because I don't want to say like they're iPad kids, but the kids I do watch tend to more gravitate towards technology, and I can't even have a conversation with them asking them what they want for dinner without them screaming at me that they're on their iPad. And so I think it's really funny that people say it's our generation when I think a lot of technology has grown with their generation more. And then going back to what you and Maya both said about dating apps, I think there is good and bad in both of them, because algorithms, I think, are an interesting concept almost to grasp, but only because sometimes the algorithms can be a little skewed in a way. Um, whether that be you're finding a person because you're attracted to them physically versus if you're attracted to their personality wise, but that's my opinion, and I think good and bad.
No, for sure. That
It,
makes so much sense.
yeah, like
It's
I
really
think
hard to like, face things over a screen. I think it does help a little, but I think it is like the ultimate deciding factor is like meeting someone in person and kind of seeing that, it's very hard to tell. I do agree with what you said though.
No, absolutely, because the person can be perfect per the algorithm for you, but when you meet them, they could be like complete 180 or complete 360 of
Yeah.
what you even expected, you know?
Exactly.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, there's good and bads. It's just how you choose to approach whether you're going to be online dating and meeting people. I think if two people really do set their heart out to actually give it their all and like have the constant communication through like text message, through like the app. I think there can be successful ways, but it's when people, going back to like the ghosting reference, are choosing to like kind of blow it off more. That's when relationships start to suffer a little bit more. Cause then if you can't hold a conversation through like a dating app, how are you supposed to carry that out in person fully?
Yeah.
I agree with the iPad kid reference that you made. And I really think that it's that because like this new generation is fully immersed in this technological world, that they kind of just see it every corner and they don't really have a choice. Whereas like for us, like we kind of had our childhood, and then as we got like midway through our childhood, we kind of started getting on the iPad wave. But I feel like a lot of kids nowadays like are more interested with what their technology does than like going outside. And I think that comes from like a lot of what the parents do and how the parents are in charge of their kid. Because I remember when I was a kid, like my parents wouldn't let me get an iPad or an iPod until I was like, I don't know how old, but old enough. So yeah, I like that analogy that you made.
No, totally. And so my siblings are a lot younger than me. They're a part of this new generation. And my dad will always ask me, like, I don't know how like you turned out so normal and they are just like glued to electronics. And then I'll always like reiterate to him, like we were born in two separate like times almost. Like growing up, like you said, technology wasn't prevalent. Like, yeah, you had TV, like, yeah, you had video games, but nobody was like fiending off of them. Whereas I don't want to say like the pandemic may have had a slight effect for these children, but I mean, my 4-year-old is glued to her iPad 24/7, you know? So, right, that's right around when the world was shutting down and they couldn't go out and play with their friends for safety concerns.
I definitely think the pandemic had like a big influence on all of us like stuck in our house, being only able to really communicate with like our technology and like through like social media and stuff. So I also think that could be part of just like our discussion in a way of um like how it's impacted. I definitely think COVID-19 had like a very big impact on that. Um and with like the iPad kids and stuff, my sister has 3 girls and they are like 4, 3, and 2, and they are also like being raised on the iPad. And I'm just like, you guys, we can't do this. We need to go touch a tree or play in some grass. Like we can't be stuck in the iPads. I think that's when it becomes like a problem. And that's where it's like impacting like those relationships. And I think that's gonna kind of affect their generation more than it's affected ours.
I just wanted to hop in quickly. Brienne's not able to unmute, so she sent me her response. So I'm just going to read it out loud so she, like the professor, knows that she is participating. But they mentioned that in regards to online dating, it can be a positive in regards to physical attraction, but negative, just like we mentioned, as like a person can be a whole different person when we actually meet them in person.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about what you guys were saying about like the COVID-19 and stuff, because I like completely agree with that. And I feel like even now, like I feel like it's like become more like unsafe or unheard of kids to just like go out and ride their bikes by themselves, or like it's seen as like bad parenting. Because like when I was a kid, I feel like I just like I knew that I like at 5 o'clock I had to be home, but like during the day or like during summer, like I feel like my parents didn't know where I was half the time just because like I was just like we all felt safe. Just like being outside, riding our bikes, like riding our bikes to our friend's house, like going to the park, like going to the gas station. But now I just feel like it's so that like that's just not a thing anymore. Like you don't really see kids out doing that. And like or like even like going to school, like in the school buses, I feel like a lot of parents now feel that they like need to like be driving their kids to school or like having their eye on their kids 24/7, which I feel like also makes a very big impact on the technology because then there's like no way to entertain them. So I feel like that has a big impact just like for with safety nowadays in general.
Oh, totally. It's so crazy to see how much society has changed because you talk to parents of this new generation, they're like, I could never let my kid outside by themselves without watching them. But then it's like, well, when we were growing up, our parents didn't have the concern that we like could be outside for hours without them seeing us, that something was like something bad was going to happen. So I
Yeah,
completely agree with you there.
It's crazy.
I agree with that too. I think they're more worried about someone like not being able to watch their kid outside when like in reality like they're not even watching their kid inside, they're having an iPad watch them. So I just think it's a little bit funny the difference in generation we're seeing here with like technology and social media.
Well, we got through our first Zoom call, unless there's anything else, that anyone wants to add. Brienne said she completely agrees with us. It wasn't as safe like when we were growing up to be outside on our own. Unless there's any final thoughts, I will end our Zoom call.
I think that's everything. Good job, guys.
Good job, guys.
Perfect. Hold on, let me end this recording.